Evening. I call to order this meeting of the Concord Planning Board on Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 at 7 p.m. A late Happy New Year's to all. And thank you for understanding our change in venue to Zoom rather than a hybrid meeting based on the inclement weather today. This meeting will be recorded for future on-demand viewing. I'd like to welcome everyone participating in this meeting and take attendance of members and staff. Rob Almeida.
Here.
Andrew Boardman.
Here.
Abby Flanagan is not here yet. Will she be attending, Elizabeth or Heather?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, we will see her later perhaps. Sue Felshed.
Here.
And Mark Giddings, I believe, is not attending.
Correct.
Okay, and I am Linda Miller and present. I'll briefly, and Elizabeth Hughes is here, our town planner. I'll briefly review our meeting procedures. Each vote will be conducted by roll call. There will be a public participation section during certain portions of the meeting. Those participating remotely, wishing to make a statement or ask a question during a public participation period, should use the Zoom raised hand function or *9 on a phone and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, you may unmute yourself in Zoom or use *6 from a phone and then speak. When you speak, please address the chair, identify yourself by name, address, and any relevant affiliations, and speak clearly for the meeting record. Comments during public participation are limited to 3 minutes or less, except for extenuating circumstances, such as for those with disabilities, and are requested to be respectful. Answers to questions, unless very brief and fact-based, will be deferred for follow-up at future meetings. I see that Abby Flanagan has joined us. Abby, can you say present?
Present.
Thank you. The board welcomes written comments at any time instead of or in addition to those made during public participation. We will now go to the first item on the agenda. That is a subdivision public hearing for 80X and 1053 Main Street. The applicant for this application has requested the public hearing to be continued without discussion to February 6th, 2024. And I believe that the board is available to hear that at 7 p.m. Could I have a motion to continue that public hearing?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
I'll second it.
Oh, well, okay.
Wait, isn't somebody actually going to make the motion? I move to postpone the application to review the definitive subdivision application of EMS development for improvement of a new roadway and for the creation of 4 new building lots at 80X and 1053 Main Street, parcels number 3,730 and 3,734 to February. Wait a minute, was it the 16th?
Yep. So you're not postponing, you're continuing the public hearing.
Continuing. You're right. Continuing the public hearing to February.
Without discussion.
Without discussion. I'm totally screwing it up. Sorry.
February 6th at 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. February 6th at 7 p.m.
Great. And I'll take the roll call on that. Rob Almeida.
Yes.
Andrew Boardman.
Yes.
Abby Flanagan.
Yes.
Sue Felshed.
Aye.
And myself, Linda Miller. Yes. Thank you all very much. We'll next move on to a site plan public hearing for the application of Cross Point Associates, Inc. under zoning bylaw section 11.8 for site plan review to demolish the existing restaurant building and construct a new 1-story multi-tenant building with site improvements at 768 Elm Street, parcel 1898. In terms of moving forward, I'd like to have 4 elements. First, I'd like the applicant to introduce themselves. Second, we received updated civil plans today. We received them late in the afternoon, so I would like the applicant to walk us through any changes that have been made since the other plans were submitted in November. Then we will review the draft decision page by page, then receive public comment, and then we'll be able to take a roll call vote. So please, can the applicant introduce themselves? I see Carrie McCormick is here with us.
Yes, good evening. Karen McCormick, Director of Development with Crosspoint Associates with offices in Newton, Massachusetts. Happy to walk through the civil plans. I can share my screen.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay. So the main change was, I think, fairly minor, was the request to add the fire department connection on the utility plan. Can everybody, oh, I haven't shared it yet. Sorry. Is it shared now? Zoom is so different than, did that work? No.
And can you tell us what page that's on? So if we want, we can look at the previous
Am I not
pages.
sharing the screen yet?
Oh, 8. Okay, thank you.
You're fine.
Okay. Okay. There's no like green surround. Okay. So the main piece was just confirmation. What we had done was previously moved the hydrant to the front corner of the property, was on the backside, but we kept the utility room at the rear. So the fire department wanted to confirm that the fire department connection would be at the front of the building. We can still have the sprinkler room at the rear. It will just run to the back. And the main piece is the hydrant has to be close to the fire department connection. So we've coordinated that on both the civil plans now and on the architectural plans. That was really the biggest coordination.
So Linda, this is on sheet 8 of the civil plans.
Yep. I'm looking, I'm not really seeing that it looks substantively different, but I'm sure it does.
Oh, it is,
Could you-
it's not substantively different.
Okay.
It's just in that front left-hand corner. To the left of the coffee shop and in front is where the hydrant got moved to. It
Mhm.
previously was in the back of the building and the fire department
Excuse
had
me.
concerns with that.
Okay,
This, this
just
is,
on the 11/27 plans, it looks like it's in the front of the building as well.
hi, good evening. This is Brandon Lee from Kelly Engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fire department connection was already shown on a previous revision. We didn't make any adjustments. That was already on the previous plan set. The only change to the plans was we corrected a typo.
Yeah,
From medical to restaurant. It was just a simple typo. That's one word was the only that changed on the entire plan set. That's noted in the revision as well, just as edit text. Right there, 3 edit text in restaurant tenant.
Mhm.
All the other sheets were no change. That's just a correction of a minor typo.
Oh,
So we coordinated, I guess, with the architectural plans, now shows it in the front left corner as well. I think maybe on the elevation, that's the piece that was added.
okay, thank you.
So really, I don't think anything of substance, is really just making sure the plans that are being referred to in the decision all kind of are in line, in sync with each other. And that was the one catch, that this had still said medical as opposed to the restaurant. So it was just a cleanup of that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much then. Elizabeth, then maybe we can move to reviewing the decision. And I think it might be most efficient if we sort of go page by page and see if we have any additional questions for the applicant or any potential changes or edits for the decision.
So you should see the decision now.
Mm-hmm.
So I am working off the draft decision Sue Felshen had sent some edits. Sue, I'm going to, we're gonna go page by page, but I'm gonna glance over any minor typos, edits. I will point them out, but I don't think they need discussion. So, do you want me to make this a little smaller?
Yeah, it
No.
might
Is
be
that better?
useful.
Or is bigger better?
No, I think that's good.
So, there was one small typo on page 1, but there were no other comments or edits unless anybody had any questions.
I only had a question whether standalone and drive up should have a comma between them. It's in the paragraph starting the applicant. And it's the third line of that paragraph.
Okay. So I think if anybody has those type of edits, we can go through them individually, or you can just send them to me tomorrow. And I can make those changes. So,
Okay, fine.
so
On page 2,
starts the conversation about the joint parking facility.
yes, did anyone have questions on page 2? So I did have a question with regard to the joint parking. And I must say that I didn't fully understand that that there would be reserved parking. It's mentioned here. Where 4 tenant spaces, right, with signage. And it's confusing to me why we would have shared parking and then reserved parking at the same time. So for the example I was thinking, you have reserved parking for the bank, but when the bank is closed at 5 o'clock and you have people at the restaurant, those parking spaces would not be available to them. And so it seems to me to counter the whole concept of having shared parking. So perhaps you can explain the necessity for having reserved parking and why we should still permit shared parking under that scenario.
Harry, would you like
Yeah,
me to reply?
Well, I can try to explain. So we had arrived at a plan that had 115 parking spaces. Once we did the calculation on the reserved or the shared parking space analysis, we would be required to have 118 parking spaces. So I think the idea is to have less impervious or less pavement. And so we were working towards that goal, and as opposed to trying to find and wedge 3 parking spaces on site, we went with the reserved parking space, and it's also going to be the use of compact spaces. So if there are those 3 additional parking, I think this is what we're talking about. If we need the 3 additional parking spaces, we can unearth those spaces by transforming the 2 rows of parking against the back line to small vehicle parking spaces, and that will be able to arrive at the 3 additional parking spaces to get us the 118 as required.
So Carrie, you're talking about what you're requesting under the next section, which is 7728. Correct me if I'm wrong, Linda. I think the question she has is that on the plan, you're actually calling out with signage spaces that are specifically designated for each of the tenants. And that's kind of counterintuitive or to the whole concept of joint parking. But before you go further, Linda, I do want to point out that the board's, engineering, traffic consultant, Rebecca Brown from GPI, is also on, and I see that she has her hand raised up, so I didn't know if she has something to add, but, I think that's, Carrie, what, the question is having spaces specifically called out, designated for
Sure.
a particular tenant is kind of
So-
counter to the whole
Yeah.
request for joint parking.
Certainly. So I think particularly with restaurants, with them offering the mobile order and pickup and things like that, that they need, and many of them offer designated, short-term parking spaces directly in front of their stores for that type of use. So those are kind of the designated parking spaces, and we do it at a number of our centers. So I'm not sure how it necessarily conflicts with the reserved parking space or the shared parking spaces.
Could we hear from Rebecca, please?
Absolutely. So Carrie just said one of the points that I was going to make about the restaurants, that right now, obviously there's a lot of pickup that's happening, a lot of mobile apps that people are ordering on, where you need parking that's designated right in the front where they can easily find it, park there, get in and out quickly. And then the other location where there was designated parking was for the bank. And that was also our recommendation as well, because of the bank drive-through, in order to provide them some additional stacking space there so that they're only blocking their own spaces. And that as that queue does back up, if it does back up beyond the queue storage area, someone could pull into those parking spaces and go in and use the ATM inside. So we would support having those limited spaces being designated specific to those uses and the remaining parking being open.
Would you find it appropriate just to say 15-minute parking as opposed to designated to the bank only or to the restaurant only? Could you have like a short-term parking as opposed to
You
or I
could do,
guess would that
for
be
the
obvious?
bank, you may want to sign it just for the hours that the bank is open, that it's for bank use, and then later in the evening, once the bank is closed, anyone could use it as they're coming to the restaurants at nighttime, or on the weekends as well, when the restaurants are going to be the busiest. And then if for the parking for the restaurant uses, you could sign those as being short-term parking if you wanted to. But it is very helpful to have them for ride pickup specifically, or like a very quick running in and picking up on an app. Otherwise, what will happen is people may be
Right.
ordering at a counter, standing around, they'll take up the space for 20 minutes while they're waiting for their food. So, and then it makes those people who are coming in for an app go park somewhere else. So, yeah.
Okay. Are
Well,
there, yes, are there other comments from any board members on this? I can't see everybody.
yes,
Yes.
so I just want to follow up a little bit on Linda's comment. So the decision says applicant is shown on the plan certain designated spaces. It strikes me that given that the required parking for each space is 26 spaces, 19 spaces, 73 spaces, 23 spaces for the 4 different uses, as long as there are 26 undesignated spaces for the reserved or designated uses. For the first use, 19 for the second, 73 for the third, and 23 for the fourth, then there would technically be enough shared parking, but I don't know that that's how we standardly set up shared parking, because there's a presumption that they will all be overlapping to a certain degree.
So Carrie, maybe you or Brandon can tell me, I think it's 3, 5, 8 spaces for the restaurant,
The 2 restaurants.
short-term, parking for the 2 restaurants, and it was 4 spaces for the bank?
5.
5 spaces for the bank. Sorry, thank you.
It still
Um,
seems preferable, though, to designate them and mark the restriction for the open hours of the business only. For all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously hard to even police these for their intended uses. So it's these tenants typically like to have, particularly with the mobile orders and things like that, to have a few designated spaces just to have dedicated. If someone parks in there that's going to the bank or multiple trips, you know, it's up to the tenants to police them, and it's just you know, suggested. We have that in the leases that we are going to allow them to have these dedicated spaces. So we're kind of committed to at least designate them per the leases. But as for monitoring and managing them, it's kind of up to each tenant. If there's an issue, then we have to. But you know, we have this type of setup at multiple shopping centers, and to my knowledge, we've never had tenants say that we have problems. And even on areas that are more restrictive in parking, we have some of these exact tenants that, and we haven't had that issue.
Sorry, I just want to raise one point. We have, to my knowledge, at least 2 parking lots in town that have restricted parking spots like this, and we have significant conflict over the parking spots. I'm thinking in particular the Starbucks parking lot that has a Starbucks and a dry cleaner. Those designated parking spots have caused physical altercations. So,
So I never, ever like to use the Starbucks parking lot as an example for anything.
no, it's totally abnormal, but what I'm saying is
Yeah.
the designated parking spots there that are 15 minutes or less have no conflict. The ones that are tenant specific have high conflict. And I think we've seen that at some other lots in town of the general, like what Sue's suggesting of these like short-term turnover parking spots that are not tenant specific. People seem to understand it, respect it, use it. It is utilized as intended and moves people through the parking in a quick and efficient manner. The tenant specific ones seem to cause more issue. So I would agree with Sue that if what the goal is to, in these short-term spots, have people in and out as quickly as possible to mitigate the impact of having fewer parking spots than we anticipate being needed, then I would imagine that these kind of short-term parking spots would be a better designation than tenant specific. I understand your leases may say something different, but we're not concerned about your leases. We're concerned about the actual use and function of the parking lot. So I would be in favor of a time limit restricted as opposed to a tenant specific. I think it accomplishes what we're actually set out to do and eliminates, you know, if you have a busy time for one tenant and a slow time for another tenant, you know, they can all use those short-term parking spots, and it allows for a little bit of greater flexibility as opposed to something that's designated for one specific tenant that kind of goes underutilized at certain times of the day. So that would be my suggestion.
So the only other thing besides not liking the existing Starbucks parking lot for anything, I'm not sure there's other places that have that type of designated signage for a lot as large as this one, though. I mean, this has 115 parking spaces. So I
I mean,
know,
the only one that I can think of, you know, you have designated spots in the lot, which is, you know, a municipal lot behind where Hote is and where the Walden Liquors are. You have some designated spots there. But no, I think in terms of efficiency, I think if what we're looking for is to keep people moving and to allow this kind of pick up and drop off and, you know, Uber Eats and that type of thing, I think the time designated spots accomplishes that with maybe eliminating some of the issues of tenant specific. But, you know, if the rest of the board feels otherwise, it's not something that I'm particularly hung up on. I just think it's a point of efficiency.
Well, I agree with Abby, actually.
And I do as well. So,
I'm not actually sure why we would incorporate the business hours only on the bank signage as opposed to all of the designated businesses, but I have a less strong feeling about that.
No, I would think we could accomplish the goals that you intend in terms of having short-term parking by the restaurants, and then by having the bank have short-term parking as well, by it with a time limit of what, banking hours, or is that 9 to 5 anymore? I don't know. Or is it really for the ATM window inside?
In which case,
In
it
which
really
case-
would be the case 24/7. I'm also, so I understand the point about the leases, but as Abby said, that's not our concern as a board. It seems unlikely that people who want short-term parking would use the short-term parking by the restaurant for the bank or vice versa. So that I second Abby's point that there's really no point to designate the short-term parking for a specific building, and it would simplify matters and stop people from being resentful of, but I was just running into this restaurant fights if it simply said this is short-term.
Again, there's no way that we can please it. It's just what tenants require in their leases and that we try to provide for them. And we try to limit the number just to, they can't carve out 20 parking spaces. So it is, again, for the mobile and fast for each, they do to carve out a few spaces directly in front of their spaces designated for them. And that's what we typically try to accommodate for our tenants.
Yes, Rebecca?
Yeah, I was wondering whether it would be okay to just say that they're mobile pickup spaces and not designate them specific to one restaurant or another, if that would help to alleviate some of the concerns on both sides.
Well, I don't know that you could say a bank space, I don't know. My
the
bank
bank.
doesn't allow mobile
Restaurant. Those are the ones I was referring to.
I
Ones
have
right
to
in
think
front of
about that one.
Yeah,
No, I
those-
think Rebecca was suggesting that the bank ones would say bank only and the restaurants would say mobile pickup only. Now I'm not sure why they would say mobile pickup only as opposed to plain old pickup only.
that would be for your people who have already ordered their food ahead and they are anticipating to walk in, grab it, and walk right back out. So if someone has not ordered their food ahead of time, that wouldn't happen. So that would be like your DoorDash, your Uber Eats, or somebody ordering on a mobile app on their phone and then driving.
Right. Oh, I was suggesting that mobile usually refers to these mobile apps, but there may actually be more than one human being left in the world who would use a non-mobile telephone to dial in an order and then drive over and pick it up. They would not qualify as mobile, but they would qualify as pickup.
I guess if they're on their mobile phone, they qualify, right? We could
Well, no, because they could be at home, call it in, and then drive over. It just seems unnecessarily dissing the people, both of them with landlines.
They might be able to fax it in.
Good one. That's right. Carrier pigeon.
Okay. Well, I think that in practicality, based on the location, those spaces would probably fall to your tenants. But I think we would prefer if it just was short term, like 15-minute parking, with the understanding that that would be what they're used for primarily. So I don't know, Elizabeth, if we could move on from this discussion or if
Sure,
We
we can,
can.
we can move on, but to Rebecca's point, the nature of the industry is that somebody orders, whether they call on a landline or they do an app, their order is placed, it is paid for. 15 minutes is a long time. So this is, this really is, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure the signage would say, Starbucks, mobile pickup parking only, or whatever, there's signage for, we're talking somebody who goes in, their order is already on the counter,
Right.
grab it, we're talking less than 3 minutes.
Right.
So.
Unless the order is wrong, and then it can be turned into a line.
Or unless there's a
come on.
line for pickup because the staff are busy.
We're talking 8 spaces out of a parking lot of 115. I'm if your traffic consultant is recommending this, and it's part of just the way restaurants operate these days, unfortunately enough. I understand, Abby, I understand your position, and the previous building commissioner wishes that Starbucks never got approved there, trust me. But I think you can move on.
Okay.
Rebecca?
If you want to move on, that's okay. I was just gonna add in, like, I've seen a lot of plazas both ways when there are these smaller strip plazas with a couple of different uses in them. And many of them have this type of signage right in the front for mobile pickup now. The ones that don't, you tend to get a lot of DoorDash drivers just pulling up wherever they want near the doorway, blocking people. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about what you want to do, whether you want to have short-term parking or however you want to have it. The mobile pickup really helps a lot with people not parking illegally. Are you going to get some people that pull in there and they're there for 30 minutes? Yeah, you will. But, at least when there's someone coming for DoorDash or something like that, they're not going to be parking illegally wherever they want to near a door, or blocking anybody or anything like that, if they have designated spaces to pull into.
Well, I don't think we're quibbling about should there be mobile pickup parking. It's really, is it going to be exclusive to the coffee shop? Is it going to be exclusive to the proposed restaurant? Is it going to be all exclusive to the bank? So that if for some reason everybody goes to the coffee shop first thing in the morning, and there are 12 cars that want to be there and spend 3 minutes each, but people go to the proposed restaurant because they want to carry out lunch. It's a a fried chicken place. Then we're stuck with 3 spaces for coffee, and then everybody's circling around, and at lunchtime nobody's picking up their coffee, they're picking up their fried chicken. So I'm just saying, why can't we have short-term parking in those 8 spaces that are not like that, and that don't say Uber Eats or DoorDash, or have ownership that is, to me, confusing to people. But that I think that was I think we all agree that short-term people want to run in and run out, and that they should be accommodated.
Yeah, and you can just put mobile pickup and not even have to say who, like which business it is. So that way, if they're coming for the coffee shop in the morning, they could use those spaces. If they're coming for one of the other restaurants in the evening, they could use those spaces.
All right, on to page 3. So page 3, are there any comments from the, or questions from, the board? So,
I did want to have Carrie talk about the screening around the rooftop equipment.
Sure.
mhm.
So I think, I think what we talked about before is we don't know exactly where we're putting the rooftop equipment at this time. So the next phase, if we get approval tonight, we'll release our architect HFA to go forward with the full building drawing set. So that's construction drawings, which is a pretty detailed design process. So he'll take the requirements, Axel from HFA will take the design requirements for each of the tenants, lay it out into the space. And each tenant will have a round of review and suggest based on their internal layout how things need to get adjusted. So it's possible that the rooftop equipment gets slid forward on the building, and we can do a sightline study when we submit for the building permit drawings or our construction drawings. We can put a sightline study so you can actually see where the rooftop units are going to be located. If you're standing on the ground, you can look up and see if you see any of the rooftop units from the back or the sides. And then I think we're committed to do a sound study pre and post for the language. But I think for the screening, there's a few different elements. One, we're not sure exactly where the rooftop units are going to be. They could be forward where that's not required. And two, adding the screening just adds to another level of shading. So we are going to be looking at putting solar on the roof. And once the construction drawings are 100% complete, the rooftop units are located, then we'll put it out for bid as well to solar providers and see what we can do for solar on the roof. So adding additional screening, we'll probably play with things to optimize the solar layout as well.
Can't we handle this through a condition? There's already the proposed condition about the sound study, as Mr. McCormick noted, but it seems that we could cover both of these issues through a condition.
Oh.
Specifying that the screening walls must be added if necessary in order to provide a site buffer and for sound if there's a decibel issue.
Well, here it says the mechanical equipment will be located at the rear of the building on the roof, but we just know now that the mechanical equipment will be on the roof. It may not even be on the rear, is what you're saying. Is that?
That's a good point. Yes, so the decision should at least say will be located
On the roof.
on the building, on the roof, on the building's roof. And
It won't be located in the front of the roof unless it's under the roof. So it is technically the rear of the roof.
Okay.
There's no way for it to be on the front of the building, and I can bring up the. One second.
Well, the elevations would lead you to believe it won't be.
So there is no physical way for the HVAC to be located on the front of the building unless it is completely under the roof. If it's under the roof, then there is no sound or sight
Right.
issues. So if it's located on the rear of the building, which would be the flat portion in the back, then it has the potential, and it's not somebody standing in the back of the building looking up. It's, sound and sight, where from this point in the back of the building, it goes down to the river and then it goes up to the residential side on the opposite side of the river. So, yeah, technically, the HVAC equipment will be located on the rear of the building roof. We just don't
And-
know where.
And will the solar panels will be on the front of the building though? Because it's south facing, that it isn't the building north facing on the back? I guess you could have it both areas.
You just have to, I think you have to study the shade effect and just make sure there's enough space. That's why we need to do a whole study and work with a consultant to understand what the limited area of solar area could be. So I think there's going to be a little bit of maneuvering for the rooftop units and trying to get clear enough away from that front peak, which will cast some shade. The rooftop units and any venting cast some shade. So it's going to be certain areas that will be carved out potentially for solar.
Well, I don't know, Elizabeth, how to formulate a condition
Yeah, let me,
in this situation.
Harry, there aren't any gen sets you're putting in, correct?
what was that, Rob?
Any generators? Just because there's restaurants, I figure I'd ask.
No, not that I'm aware of it.
Okay.
The size I haven't been aware that they require that.
I don't require, just curious if they get.
What did you call it?
The visual testing that you would do, the
Sightline study.
Site,
Site study.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, my wood stove broke, so I'm freezing, my hands aren't
Oh,
typing.
no.
So does that work?
I think that phrase might need to be moved, but that can be taken up just for grammatical reasons, but that doesn't need to be
Okay.
discussed here.
Okay. Another issue on this page, when you're done, Elizabeth, before we move on to the next page.
Okay,
And that has to do with this, actually that paragraph before 11.8.5. When we talk about the where the small car spaces, the reserved parking will be. I didn't see that on the plans. So I don't know. I think
is there a note on the plans?
is
Yes.
there a note on the
Yeah,
plan?
if you look at sheet 4, it's a blowout, a blow up little call out. in the upper left corner, the compact parking option layout. So it shows what it would be if they were compact. I can
I
share.
see.
Oh, I got.
Sort of. So it would be, is that 19 or 18 compact spaces? Where, I see. So it's up in the left corner there?
Yes. So there's 7 spaces, standard spaces that is proposed. And then if we need to call out the 3 reserved spaces, we would change those to 8-foot wide spaces as opposed to 9-foot. And that gets you 1 more space. So that gets you the 8 there. And then across the back, we would gain 2 additional spaces by converting those to 8-foot spaces. There's 1 space down at the end that Brandon had maintained at standard 9-foot. The extra foot wasn't needed, so there's 8 compact plus 1 standard space.
And when you say they'd be restriped, but would they also be identified as small car?
Yeah, I mean, we can put a couple signs across the back just to let people
Yeah,
know.
or
really
just
would be-
on the ground when you're striping, put compact car or whatever people put.
The goal would be that they would be for employees so that people aren't
Right.
going in and out of them.
So on this compact parking option layout, if you can just include some signage
Sure.
that's shown on the plan, that's all that's required. And then if the health division or the restaurant use is determined that the dumpster location needs to be larger, I guess
Yes.
you,
How would
where
that work?
would you gain additional parking spaces? Is it? Because right now you're talking about only these spaces along the back. Would you then be looking to like just redo 2 additional spaces?
If we had to take up 2 of the spaces on the back to enlarge the dumpster.
Yes.
We could potentially enlarge it to the right slightly, but not much. You can take the 1 foot on the left side. We can look at picking up more frequently. It's another way to do it. If it's just a matter of volume of trash that needs to be managed.
I don't think it's gonna be volume. I think it's gonna actually be actual needs as far as whether composting becomes a requirement for the state. So I'm wondering if you want to just in that small car detail, maybe just like taking, if you had to enlarge it with these 2 spaces on this side, just redoing these 3 spaces over here. Whatever it takes to make up 2 more additional spaces in there.
We could also put some composting if it's just compost that needs to be right directly behind the coffee shop in that little island. So there's closer to the building, I think, directly behind right behind the coffee shop, or they have the little door to there. Yeah, we could potentially do a little storage there, but
I'm not sure their restaurant. So I'm
There's,
not sure your restaurant patio here would want composting right here, but
this is Brandon Lee from Kelly Engineering. The front yard setback for parking is 20 feet. So if you go to the front of the site, there is space available on the left driveway entrance. Yep, right there. You could add 2 more parking spaces and still stay out of the 20-foot front yard setback. So be in line with the other parking spaces to the right.
yeah, what I was trying to do was get away with actually having to increase any of the pavement and then have to deal with any additional stormwater drainage and
Right.
any pattern, so that's why restriping seemed like a simpler solution since we're only talking about 3 to 5 spaces.
Yeah, so you could restripe the 9 spaces directly behind the building and gain 1 space there. And then you'd be able to expand it 9 feet.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
substantial.
think one additional space is all
Yeah.
that's really needed.
Okay, so yeah, I think we have some
Okay.
flexibility if we had to.
So Linda, I think all that is just a slight amendment to this compact parking option to incorporate 1 additional space somewhere else.
Yes, so it's located on the drawings. That would be great. Okay, so moving right along, Elizabeth. We are now on page 4. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Wait, are we on 4 yet?
4, yes.
Yes, okay, just cross correlating. Um,
5.
On to 5. I had one question, but are there questions from the board on 5? And this may be just for you, Elizabeth, but the 11 p.m. Turn off was something that I wondered about. And I think that had to do a little bit with the conversation that another restaurant had with the select board.
It was the hours that the board put on the site plan decision for the adjacent Dunkin's. So Carrie, I don't know if you know if the larger restaurant will have hours of operation beyond 11.
I don't, off the top of my head, know their hours of operation. One of the challenges they have is they can close, but then they have staff that continue to clean up, and they want to make sure it's safe for staff to operate, get to the dumpster, and get to their car after the work shift ends.
Right. So I was just wondering, 11 o'clock is not an unreasonable time for a restaurant to close, but as you point out, you want the lights to be on after that time. So Elizabeth, what is the general?
The board has also conditioned an hour after close of business.
Okay. I mean, but the select board would have some say over the closing time, correct?
Only if the
There's a-
restaurant has an alcohol license,
Right.
and it may not be the closing of the business, it may be, the serving of alcohol.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I do believe the larger restaurant's going to want to stay open till 11 on Fridays and Saturdays, and we'll look to have alcohol if it's possible for both.
So this can be no later than an hour after the close of business.
And then the select board can make that determination. Would that be agreeable, Carrie?
Yeah, if this is they grant the liquor license, is that?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they grant
Yeah,
liquor license.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Moving on from that, anything board members have on page 6?
I do.
Okay.
All right. First, I did not understand the second paragraph that begins in an October 18th memo, no, that's the first one, the next paragraph after it, which starts the same. The last line says incorporated all recommended conditions. And what I didn't understand was by all, did that mean all the CPW water sewer? Okay, that takes care of my question. And then I had another thing on this page, which was in the next paragraph. Just about where you are, Elizabeth, end of the line, it says new pole or rebuild their overhead lines as necessary. And I didn't understand the distinction between either relocating pole and transferring utilities to a new pole, or not relocating the pole and on the other hand, rebuilding the overhead lines. And I questioned whether there was some kind of confusion in the way that sentence was written. Is that really the choice between either relocating the pole or rebuilding the overhead lines?
So they will have to relocate the pole. That is happening. Whether they have to rebuild the overhead lines or not, has not been determined at this time. They may be able to relocate the pole and not have to rebuild the overhead lines.
So then
Or-
I think it should say the applicant will be required to pay for all expenses associated with the location of the pole and transfer of all utilities to the new pole, period. If the applicant is required to rebuild overhead lines as necessary to complete the transfer work, they will be required to pay for this as well. Or maybe it should just say, and transfer of all utilities to the new pole and rebuild
So,
their
Susan,
overhead lines as necessary.
Since this is coming from CMLP, I'm pretty sure that they are going to make the applicant pay for whatever they have to do.
Okay, I will go with what CMLP, I will go with that then. And then the next sentence, CMLP notes that they are working with the applicant on an option to underground. And yeah, it said to retain the overhead system and install an underground system. And I think it just meant was
Yes,
supposed to be or instead of and. Simple
Yes.
change. Yeah,
definitely.
okay. That was all I had on this page.
Okay, page 7.
I have a question about this. So the app on this item H, the applicant has stated that they are looking into the possibility of solar, which is great, and I applaud that. But I am wondering whether or not solar is a possibility, what happens with the roof? Can it be painted white to reduce solar gain, at least in any parts that aren't covered by HVAC equipment or solar panels?
Well, I think they actually sell white roof material, so it doesn't necessarily be painted white.
Oh, not necessarily painted. I should have said,
Right.
you're quite right. I should have said colored white and, white or white adjacent.
Yeah, actually am not proficient in the thermal gain. The roofs that we've done recently, I'm pretty sure are still kind of black for some reason. I'm not exactly sure the cost or not, whatever the benefit, and why
New York,
it is white.
New York City has instituted a whole thing they call cool roofs. They've repainted or recolored um, vast numbers of roofs in New York City, and they've noticed a significant temperature drop thanks to that. I realize this is only one roof, but every roof counts. And particularly if the roofing material is available in a white or near white color, that would make it relatively easy to handle. So that's my comment on this. Shall
Vestige?
ensure that the roof is colored white where not, where exposed to the sun.
Well, I'm sure if it's possible to choose a light color, they would just make the whole roof that light color and not have it be a different color under the HVAC equipment, but
Well, yes, that's a good point. Why, that would just be harder.
so the question is whether you want this to be something the applicant can investigate and provide information to the town planner, or whether you want to make this a requirement.
My preference is to not make it a requirement, since it's something that someone on the board read someone else is doing. Like, I do understand white is better from, it's like an obvious thing, but where we don't know the materials are equal, it seems like something more burdensome than maybe necessary for what we're trying to do. So possibly investigating it is more appropriate.
Shall, if practical, use a light color for the roof? Would, if practical, be a suitable hedge on that, or is that not?
I would probably prefer investigate and provide information to the building commissioner. You know,
I could
on
live
the
with that.
use- You know, on the use of a light colored roof.
I could live with that, although that might potentially be more work than just saying, oh, look, it comes in both colors, we'll use the light one.
Well, that's fine with me.
Either way is okay by me, frankly. And by the way, New York City was just one example. I've read about roof color in several contexts, and not just roof color,
Oh,
other,
no, I read something
Yeah.
too about ultra white paint and the impact that it has on solar reflection. That
Yeah.
you could actually alter the climate if it was adopted, but
I wouldn't want to go that far in our decision, but yes.
And I think this would just be on the flat portion of the roof, not the pitched shingled roof.
Correct, correct.
I don't know if you want to designate.
And then Carrie, I don't know if you have further information on the EV charging.
Yeah, we did talk to CMLP about that. We actually had a meeting with them today, just to go over the service and the load letter. So we met with our engineer and Jeff Cosgrove. We also had a chance to talk a little bit more about the EV charging program that they have, and there are some rebates available. So we are looking at installing potentially one like dual head EV charging station if it works. We have to give him the load on that and look at putting it in probably the front right corner of the site. So we're continuing to work with CMLP and Concord Drives Electric on that.
Thank you. Any other comments on page 7?
Only that should be dual head with an A, although
Right.
it would be fun with an E.
Yeah. Watching too many Westerns.
And this would be for a level 2
Oh,
station.
level 2, okay. I want to save this.
Save early, save often.
You said level 2?
Yep.
So at this time, I will add, the plans would need to be, revised to show, to have a condition, not the plans, I'm sorry. The conditions would need to be revised to include, the dual head level 2 charging station and the condition regarding the roof color. And
A tweak to the small car striping if additional parking is needed.
For the signage.
and the change to the plans for the compact parking diagram to show one additional parking space should the dumpster need to be expanded, and the small car signage.
And the short-term parking, or does that not come under a condition?
So that's already on the plan, but I did not
Okay,
really get a consensus from the board whether you wanted the signage not to be tenant specific or just to be 8 short-term pre-ordered mobile pickup signage, or whether 8 spaces with 3 designated for one residence and 5 for the other was acceptable.
well, Rebecca made a good point. I am not accustomed to this mobile pickup stuff, that it's the employees of the mobile pickup services that need to be signaled where they can safely park, because if they're not signaled where they can do so, they will park in bad places. But that is still not an argument for restricting that signage to a particular restaurant. It is, however, a reason to restrict those spaces to the restaurants in general, saying mobile pickup with that hard word. But I don't have that strong a feeling about it.
Well, perhaps you could say restaurant mobile pickup in those spaces, and in the bank, you could say bank short-term parking 9 to 5.
So how about if we incorporate a condition that prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant provide the town planner review and approval, the signage for the short-term mobile pickup and bank parking.
That
Sounds-
works for me.
Sounds good.
Okay. So just so I don't forget to, we could find Linda, we can go back, but just, um, we have signage, roof color, and
The small car compact restriping in case extra parking is needed.
okay. If you want to go back. Okay. I think so. So this is a standard condition for water and sewer.
Okay, that's the standard condition, and that's, was just making sure it wasn't an error.
It is not, but I will ask them if that should be a shall and not a may, but it's their condition, but I will ask.
Thanks.
Okay, on to page 9. I'm on, oh, I see. Ah, very fine. Okay, you got that one.
So I know Rebecca is still on. Again, I don't know why equipment comes after transformer. I can tell you that,
If that's how CMLP talks, okay, I was just once again, I was just checking.
if you want to wait, I can go ask my husband, but
Isn't
not,
he huddling in a corner because he's freezing to death?
but I will ask that of CMLP.
Sure.
And and I know, Sue, you had,
There was the belt and suspenders drain layer, but
I'll make that change, that's fine. And then, so Rebecca, so it starts with the condition, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and if approved by Mass DOT. And Sue's question is, should that be, unless disapproved instead of, and it's not,
either way, it's open-ended on the grounds that if we ask Mass DOT, how long do we wait to hear back before deciding that they're just not going to answer at all, in which case, what happens? So I was questioning the specific wording about how that's specified.
so the applicant has already filed their 25% design plans with Mass DOT. And I think this condition up here deals with all of those outstanding items that would have to be addressed prior to the issuance of a building permit under condition 12 and 13. So by the time they go for a certificate of occupancy, all of those items, we will know whether we will know by then whether Mass DOT has approved all of these items listed in condition 20, is it 29?
Whatever. Okay, then I think it's fine as written.
Okay. Page 13.
I don't think there were.
So I had a question. Oops. Sorry, keep going. Actually on 14, but it's really what had been 34, this prior to issuance. You have, if you go back up on 30, essentially the same thing. So why can't you consolidate those and just add CMLP onto the list of groups that are required to receive the
Sure.
as-built plans?
I can tell you the reason why is that this condition for CMLP used to be much more specific to the utility, the electrical systems, but this past letter, they narrowed the condition. So yes, that's fine.
Okay, and then you might want to put in a stamped as-built plan, because that's what the other one says. Okay. I felt very good about eliminating one condition. Sorry.
I just have a quick
We work,
question, 20, if we can go back to it.
we work on that. Okay, see, are we on page
Wait,
14.
no, Mr. McCormick just asked something.
Just, yeah, 20, I
Oh,
just had a
sorry.
confirmation question. So it's prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit for each food establishment a food plan review,
Yes.
Form J. Is that prior to the issuance of a building permit for each of the tenant spaces? Because we'll get a building permit for the building shell, and then each tenant will apply for their own building permit for the fit out. So I just wanted to confirm if it was that it's for each tenant space that.
I
Form
don't believe so, because your septic system is gonna be based on those food permits.
Okay.
So that's why I think all 4 food permits or 3 food permits have to be issued before they will allow the actual building permit. Because your septic system is gonna have to be designed to handle whatever the food permits
Okay. Okay.
come out to be, and that's my understanding.
Okay.
I mean, if the board is comfortable with the, granting the decision as amended tonight with the incorporation of these 3 additional conditions, and I can check with the public health director tomorrow to verify that it is, those food permits have to be issued before the building permit gets issued, because you're gonna have to have your septic system designed and approved before the building permit is issued.
Understood.
And then I think, the other comments that Sue had were, just minor.
Okay. Are there any additional comments from members of the board? Then I'd like to take public comment if there are members of the public who would like to comment on this application. I see Nick Pappas. Mr. Pappas, please go ahead. I don't see that you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Just
Oh,
to
there you
pull-
go. Great.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize for joining late, but I had a question about the small car spaces. Is that still in the, I know at one point the developer was thinking of having all small car spaces possibly, and I'm a member of the Transportation Advisory Board, and I'm just speaking for myself. I would be concerned about an excessive number of small car spaces, given that most cars these days are larger and larger than they have been traditionally. Just wanted to make that statement publicly.
Thank you. Elizabeth, would you like to respond in terms of the total number of small car spaces that are currently in the plan and the potential for additional small car spaces to be added?
Definitely not, I'm gonna turn that over to Carrie or Brandon. It is
Okay.
not a number I have in my head.
Okay.
I can say, so right now there are 0 small car spaces proposed.
That's what
So
I,
they're all 100% standard size spaces. So it's only in the event that there's too many, we need additional parking spaces. We have 3 that are reserved that we can earn by changing 7 parking spaces, kind of the back left. We can change that to 8 by using small car spaces, and then the row across the back that are currently 17 parking spaces, we can change those to small car spaces as well. So that would get us go from 24 standard spaces, then we'd add so it'd be 18 plus so 26. So 24 up to 24 standard would be converted to 26 compact.
Okay, I'm fine with that. That's very reasonable. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question. Are there any additional questions from members of the public? Seeing none, then I suggest that we formulate a recommendation in terms of the decision.
So the board is actually issuing this site plan decision. So you would be moved to approve
Okay,
the application based on the decision as amended tonight.
okay. Then I guess I move to approve the application of Crosspoint Associates, Inc. under zoning bylaw section 11.8 for site plan review to demolish the existing restaurant building and construct a new one-story multi-tenant building with site improvements at 768 Elm Street, parcel number 1898, with the decision as amended.
And I think your motion should include the other two sections, 7724 and 7728.
Thank you. Including 7724 and 7728. Under the site plan rules and regulations.
Second.
Thank you, Sue. Take a roll call on that. Starting with Sue,
Aye.
Abby Flanagan,
Aye.
Andrew Boardman,
Aye.
Rob Almeida,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Miller. Yes. So, Mr. McCormick, thanks very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody's time and input. Look forward to going to construction, hopefully in July.
Okay,
All right.
thank you,
all.
and best of luck with the rest of the project.
Thank you. It's not easy. There's a lot more that comes to it. So I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Okay, moving on now to administrative matters. The first matter will be public comment. Public comment is limited to up to 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker. Public comment is limited to items that are not on tonight's agenda. And so I will ask of members of the public if they would identify themselves if they have any things they'd like to offer. And I see one hand from Mary Hartman.
Thank you, Linda. Hi, my name is Mary Hartman, 16 Concord Green, Unit 6. I'm on the select board speaking for myself. Linda, I haven't been at your meetings lately, but I'm wondering if you could give me an update on the percent of affordable in the MBTA Communities Act, where that stands.
If you have seen the article,
Yep.
We have structured the article so that based on what our financial feasibility study results are, we have the potential to have as much as 20% of the housing in the MBTA communities, multifamily housing, as affordable at 80% levels, down to 10%. But we do not have, we are awaiting the finance department's review of the and maybe Elizabeth would like to update this if she has an update, but we are awaiting the finance department's review of the contract.
So the contract has been signed and executed and is complete. And so I'm waiting from the consultant to see if he will be able to complete the economic feasibility analysis before the planning board's public hearing on March 12th.
Great.
And
Great.
so hopefully we'll be able to have a more definitive response then.
Before the hearing. Great, thank
We
you.
would like to. That's
That's the
we-
goal.
we've mentioned that as to the consultant that would be.
But you'll definitely have it before town meeting.
I can't say. I mean,
Yes.
we can't.
Yeah.
w-
Yeah, I
we're
know.
No,
depending on the consultant, and we have indicated that, our time frame would be optimal if it was available before the hearing, and definitely we would need to have that information. But if we don't have that information, we still can move forward in terms of town meeting and see if the town is willing to deal with the variability, which might happen,
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other individuals who'd like to have a public comment this evening? Okay. So now we're going to move on to Sunnyside Lane. And Elizabeth, would you like to describe this administrative issue?
Hold on, do I have to recuse myself as an abutter? Okay, I recuse myself. I'm turning off. I'm muting myself and I'm stepping screen so you can't even see me grimace or grin.
Right.
So back in February, the board did issue a lot release for 41, 47 and
50.
50 Sunnyside Lane, keeping 61 Sunnyside Lane as the performance guarantee under the restrictive covenant. The applicant, the developer did not record that restrictive, that lot release, but now has somebody interested in 61 and would like to have the board issue a lot release for 41, 47, and 61, and keeping 50 Sunnyside Lane as the performance guarantee. The reason I'm recommending that the board rescind the previous lot release is that the lot release specifically stated all 3 lots. And it is much cleaner just to rescind that complete lot release for those 3 lots and just issue a new lot release with the change and the 3 lots.
Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? If not, then I move to rescind the February 21, 23 lot release for 41, 47, and 50 Sunnyside Lane and grant a release from the restricted covenant for 41, 47, and 61 Sunnyside Lane. Could I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. And so taking roll call, Rob Almeida,
Yes.
Andrew Boardman,
Yes.
Abby Flanagan,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Miller, aye. Thank you very much. And someone tell Sue she come back. Oh, here she comes. All right, great. So our next item of discussion is potential 2025 annual town meeting zoning bylaw amendments discussion. And I'm going to ask Elizabeth to sort of walk us through this, but it may seem very early to be doing this because we're not even to annual town meeting 2024. But I think I found that it's much better to think about this earlier in the year and decide as a group what our priorities might be and get advice from Elizabeth on the timing of how these projects can take and how many of these projects the board can take on at any one point in time. So I thought it would be useful to begin this discussion now rather than wait until later in the year. So yes, I'll turn this over to Elizabeth.
Sure. So on the list, the first thought was definitely, the parking requirements. So I will be working with Mark Giddings and probably, meeting with him in the next couple of weeks, kind of, he was going to take those technical memos, try to put them in more of I think a table type chart for the board to begin a discussion on what can be moved forward for 2025, what may require, additional public engagement and maybe additional research or any of, whatever may be needed for each one of those. So I do think that one is on a track. Not sure, what the board's going to decide as far as, all the things that were Sam identified in those technical memos. So I think that's going to play out in the next few months. The other one is with the MBTA communities conversation. There was a lot of citizen input about the looking again at the combined business residence bylaw and not specifically for like the Thoreau Depot Business District, but all of currently the combined business residence bylaw is for any of the business districts. So whether the board wanted to think about revisiting that bylaw and looking at amending that in some fashion to try to address the reasons why it is not being used. And another item for discussion, and I think this is something that the Economic Vitality Committee, which has been invited to the board's meeting in March to come and talk about what they're doing and ways to coordinate and collaborate with the planning board. But one item was allowing retail use as an accessory use in the industrial zoning district. This comes from interest in what was the Gold's Gym on Domino Drive, which is an industrial zone district. Somebody talked about having a brewery there. There was also another manufacturing business where they wanted to have a small retail area, which in conversations with the building commissioner, we did find a previous memo from I think it was like 20 some years ago from the building commissioner outlining a way that a industrial use could as an accessory use have a small retail area for the sale of items that are being manufactured there, so long as it was subordinate, only the items that are being manufactured there. And it was a pretty detailed memo. But what the current building commissioner pointed out is, let's take the brewery as an example. Yes, you could sell beer that's being manufactured there. And I also believe that the zoning bylaw would allow for even a small restaurant, but other retail uses, selling t-shirts or mugs or other retail items that aren't manufactured there would not be permitted. So it is just something for discussion. And I think that's probably one where traditionally the board does invite the building commissioner to one of your meetings to go over, your current list of items that you're thinking about and get his input. So I would probably look to suggest the board do that probably in your late February or March meeting, and have him review again the previous building commissioner's letter regarding that topic. There's the site plan decision timeframe, which the board decided to postpone from 2024 to 2025. And then there has been conversations similar to what West Concord Village and West Concord Business, prohibiting professional offices on the first floor in the business district, whether that's something that the board wants to have a conversation with for Concord Center, Thoreau Depot, and 9 Acre Corner. And then there's the next round of housekeeping amendments that Sue's been working on.
So, okay, sorry, go ahead, Linda.
I was going to ask, in prior years, I think we've looked at the Envision Concord documents to try and coordinate those suggestions or those priorities with the priorities that we've found in our working on the planning board. And I wondered, rather than have the entire planning board go through that process, if we could ask Elizabeth to review that and see if there's anything that we might want to add to this list. And certainly any planning board member can go back and review Envision as well. But I think I found in the past, trying to do that as a group is a little bit burdensome. So could I ask you to do that, Elizabeth? And anyone else and should they want? And then the other thing that I would say is we've made so much progress with housing between the ADUs and then the two-family dwellings, both in Residence C and now potentially in Residence B, the MBTA communities, multifamily housing work. And I wondered, Elizabeth, is there a next step that we might put on this list in terms of housing that you've been thinking of or that you might think of? So
well, I definitely think, looking at the combined business residence bylaw, is about affordable housing.
mm-hmm.
And so that is one area. But I'll be happy to go through the Envision Concord action items list and see if there's other things that can be pulled out. But it may also be a conversation the board may want to have with the various housing groups, maybe at the next housing roundtable, which I think is sometime in April.
That's great. Or certainly any of the housing groups could communicate with us at any time at our, at our meetings, or, send us any of their thoughts to you by
Okay,
email.
I'd be happy to send out
Great.
that email to all of them and
That'd be super.
okay.
Yeah, let's include them. Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off, Sue, so please go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. I only wanted to add that if we're thinking about looking at combined business residents throughout the town for in business districts, and we're also maybe thinking of looking at ground floor retail throughout business districts. I wondered if we would be interested in looking a slightly more broadly at business districts in terms of dimensional requirements. And we've just seen a case where we've approved a site plan that for a building that has to be 1 story, even though it's right en route to, well, there's nowhere, hardly anywhere in town where we require 1-story buildings. And why on earth do we do that, particularly in a location like that? Also, some of our business district setbacks essentially require parking in front and buildings in the rear, which is centered toward cars and not people. And I'm not talking about radical changes here, but I'm wondering, is this a time to take, again, some of the things we've done in West Concord in the village district, where buildings have to be up to the curb, well, close to the curb, without parking in front, and bringing those advantages all over town, so that if some large property, and there are a couple one could think of that could be redeveloped, whether it's as pure business or as combined business residence, they would be more people-centric and make reasonable use of space with the same height requirements that we generally have throughout the town, rather than shorter.
That sounds very interesting.
Oh, and when I say business, I mean business, limited business, the assorted variations.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Again, this is just the beginning of the conversation, but I think that's a pretty good list, and then maybe Elizabeth can think of also kind of the amount of mental work and capacity that we all have so that we can come up with a priorities list that's realistic. Great. And now I think we're on to Chair's report, Planning Board liaisons, and Town Planner updates. And I'm going to say I don't have much of a Chair's report. I just want to say that I'm very grateful to the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust and the Concord Housing Foundation. They've both recently at their meetings voted in support of 2 articles, the MBTA Communities article and the article on Residence B 2-family housing. So that's a good start for the year. Hope we'll see more support as well along the line. And then I know, Sue, you wanted to talk a bit about community preservation, which would be great to have an update there.
Yes, okay, I don't have a whole lot here, but the next step for the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, having come up with its warrant article for the Springstown meeting, is to look at what to do next and make its annual update to the community preservation plan. Now, I myself looked over the current plan. We were requested to, for members who represent a committee, which I do representing the planning board, consider getting input from our committee on the relevant section of the plan before February, or at least before February 5th, if possible. So that still gives us some, this meeting and the next. Now, we, the planning board, take care of zoning issues that affect housing and open space and certain issues by the way zoning is laid out, but we don't actually, we're not responsible for creating or preserving housing or doing historical preservation or creating or preserving open space or overseeing recreation in any way. We only put forward changes to zoning of where such things would be allowed and to what extent. So I'm not sure how much input we have on the community preservation plan, but I wanted to bring that before the board in case we have something to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I looked at it as well, and I didn't really see that how we would find some constructive ways to contribute. But I'm open to that, and I don't know if Elizabeth, planning boards have done that in the past, or if you can think of anything. So, I'm grateful that they've, sought our input, but, unless other members have any, creative ideas, I, probably will let you continue your arduous, representation of the planning board, or now that they've done the hard work for the, hopefully the year. So thanks. Thanks for all your efforts on our behalf, which I know has not been, recognized as much as it should have been, because it's a huge task. You're really working on 2 committees. So thank you very much, Sue.
Well, thank you, but the arduous work is in fact now over. It's the
Oh,
fall that's really busy.
Okay.
The work is not all over, but
Yeah.
the big hump is over.
Great. Thanks. Thanks as well. All right. And then Elizabeth, turn this over to you if there are any planner comments for tonight.
Did get revised documents and a lot of information for 166 Commonwealth Ave. So that's all been posted to the webpage. If the board wants to start looking at that, it's been sent to town staff and to the outside consultant for their review. I don't think everybody will be able to have their review and comments back to me for this to be on the January 30th meeting. So it will probably appear on the February 6th meeting. Let's see. Last Thursday, the Board of Appeals tried to have continued public hearing on the Novo comprehensive permit. It was a hybrid meeting at the Harvey Wheeler Community Center, which will never happen again. It was a catastrophic failure of all electronic equipment. So finally at 8:30, the chairman just postponed the public hearing to the next meeting, which is February 14th. I have no life, but that's okay. So at that meeting will be traffic, architecture, and it will be in the townhouse hearing room, so that Minuteman Media Network does not have to try and set all that equipment up. So it should be much smoother. And then this Thursday at the Board of Appeals meeting, the board is opening the public hearing for the residences at Thoreau, 275 Forest Ridge Road, and immediately continuing it without discussion to February 29th. That is necessary because the board has 30 days to open the public hearing, which is the 19th. So that project will also be going out for an outside consultant review, similar to what is being done for the Novo Riverside Commons project. So at some point, I am guessing. I think it's very challenging for all the other boards and committees to review these projects before the outside consultants have at least done their initial peer review. So I do not, that contract is being reviewed currently by the finance department. So I'm hopeful that they will have their initial review done from February 29th. It will be continued out to April 4th. So I think probably I'm not sure if the planning board has the ability to have, I think you will probably have a meeting to provide your comments to the Board of Appeals sometime in that time frame.
Thank you. In terms of the Novo application, I believe they have added an architectural consultant. Has any
Yes. Yep,
um
so,
thing happen there?
yeah, so that's in the process of, there'll be a working group with two members of the board with their consultant architect and the applicant's architect to go over issues and concerns that were raised at the previous public hearing a month ago, and then discussed at the February 14th meeting.
As well as the traffic study.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure that will be a very well attended meeting. Sorry you have to be there.
That's okay. It will be a hybrid meeting, so people can attend virtually.
All right, well, thank you for that update. And I guess thank everyone for attending the meeting tonight. Appreciate that. And I guess think snow. I hope you'll get some snow up your way.
Vermont has rideable snow, so I'm very excited. So
That's great. Okay.
more importantly, my husband is a happy person. So
Always,
Thank you.
always the good news. All right. Thanks so much. Good night, everybody.
All right, good night.
Good night, everyone.
All right.